Good afternoon. My name is Alyssa Carter, and I am an early childhood education major here at Albany State University. I am also a Goizueta Scholarship recipient. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the College of Education's annual Educator Summit. The conference is sponsored by the college's Research and Scholarship Committee. This year's theme is Bridging the Divide, Building the Community, Culture, and Cooperation. So enjoy the sessions that reflect innovation, deliver the best practices for teaching, and present evidence-based findings while using multimedia approaches. Thank you.
Hey, y'all. It's my pleasure to be able to introduce your speaker for this evening. I'm going to read you what I'm supposed to say, and then you know I have to go off script, right? So, Dr. Cheryl J Croft is presently an assistant professor in the Department of Educational Leadership at Keynote State University, where she is also coordinator of the Educational Doctorate Program, the EDD. She also is director of teaching in the Urban South, Titus. And she has been since its inception at Emory University in 2011. Dr. Croft is co-author of The Perfect Storm of Educational Reform and the sole author of Equality or Equity, What's the Difference and Why It Matters. She also has another publication titled Making the Invisible Visible, The Necessity of Multicultural Education for School Leaders. She is an international, national, and local presenter and has been featured as keynote speaker for many educational summits. With over 35 years of experience working in P12 urban districts, Dr. Croft's educational roles have ranged from teacher to principal to district curriculum director to assistant superintendent. Her present work informs and bridges higher and P12 education for university leaders, P12 leaders, and community leaders who wish to establish authentic P through 20 collaborations. Most recently, Dr. Croft was awarded the Lifetime Educator Award from Harper High School. Now I get to go off script. So I met Dr. Croft in 2008, and one of the first things I thought to myself was, she's gonna be my mentor. She don't know it yet, but she's pretty fly, and she has this experience that I know could benefit me. Lerone Bennett, a famous black historian, once said, an educator in a system of oppression is either a revolutionary or an oppressor. I feel very strongly the same way that Bennett did, that today we are either people who can liberate students' minds or further enslave them in a classroom. I believe that all of us in this room should be revolutionary educators. Che Guevara said, if you tremble with indignation at every injustice, then you are a comrade of mine. So I'd like to welcome to the stage Dr. Cheryl J Croft, a comrade of mine.
Good evening, everyone. I am very honored and very grateful to be here this evening. I'd like to thank Dr. Porter. I'd like to thank Dr. Jenkins. I'd like to thank Mrs. Anderson. And I'd like to thank my dear, dear friend, Dr. Pogue, who is also co-author of a book that we have coming out probably in late 2018, Living the Legacy. I bring you greetings from the Department of Educational Leadership and my department chair, Dr. Eugenia Whitlock. I'm aware and commend you on your choice of themes, building the divide, building community, culture, and cooperation. And in that light, I have chosen the theme, the title, 40 plus years in education, and I still see the light. I'd like to try a little experiment with you this afternoon, and if you will kind of go along with the program, maybe it might work, maybe it won't, but we'll see. And this requires trust, okay, and I know in this day and time, trust is a premium, but I'd like for you for, let's say 3 seconds, listen closely, to close your eyes. Don't do it yet. And then when you close your eyes, I'd like for you to envision total darkness. Then I'd like for you to envision one candle in that darkness. I'm going to count to 3, and then I'm going to ask you to close your eyes, envision the darkness, and then envision one candle. 1, 2, 3. You may open your eyes. Just to give you a little bit about my background and from whence I have come. My great-grandfather used to follow his half-brother to school, and he would listen to the lessons that his half-white brother was given. He learned to read and write by listening. He passed that passion on to my grandfather. My grandfather was a Baptist preacher born shortly after Reconstruction, who inadvertently ran over and killed a man during Jim Crow. He was incarcerated. He spent 3 months in jail, and during that time, he probably should have been sent to the chain gang, or perhaps he would have even been murdered. He asked his children to bring him every law book that they could find. And when his court came to case, he defended himself, and he was released. From him, I learned the power of learning as much as you possibly can. My grandmother was a school teacher, one-room school teacher who taught 50 and 60 children in one building. She had a horse and buggy, and she had an organ. And I remember my aunt telling us how mean she was, but that she taught them to read and write and do arithmetic. My father, an avid reader, got his high school diploma after he served the country in World War II, and where he received a bronze medal. My mother wanted to go on to college to be a teacher, but her Baptist father said, no, women are just supposed to have babies and stay at home. And so instead, she became my first teacher. These are the people who ignited lights in my life. So my first premise with you today is that you have to first have a light before you can share it with others. I've been watching you. I've been watching the enthusiasm on your faces, and I can tell that many of you have lights now that you're anxious to go out and share with others. And tonight, what I'd like to do is to sort of warn you, admonish you, and encourage you not to lose your lights. You might want to think about the political history and what has caused so many of our educators to be so downtrodden. It started with a nation at risk, and actually a little bit before that. But with a nation at risk, they talked to us about the things that were wrong with our schools. And then we had No Child Left Behind, the institutionalized accountability. And then we had Race to the Top, that sort of commodified schooling. And then we have ESSA. All of this, if you think about it, it led from failing children, to failing teachers, to failing principals, to failing schools, and then most recently failing districts, all based on unattainable scores. By 2014, everybody was supposed to be 100%, right? But if you know anything about what happened in Georgia, the funds were cut. So how are we supposed to make that kind of difference? And if we're honest with ourselves, while K-12 grappled with the pejorative message of how bad they were in higher ed, we sat back and we went in and we studied the pathologies of what was wrong. Instead of community service, community engagement that would help them. And now, what has happened? Educational programs, EdTPA, the GACE, and in leadership programs, the PASL. So while we were looking at P12, guess what? We still have to deal with those kinds of things now. What are some of the stories? What are some of the things that align with what we're hearing? We have the school-to-prison pipeline. We have Georgia high school prisons. Did you know that there were 2 high schools in prisons in Georgia for high school students? Did you know that? Did you know that they have plans to build 3 more? And did you know that it costs $2.5 million per month to run those schools? And did you know that they are not being run by the Georgia DOE, they're being run by private agencies? So who is benefiting from these things that are going on in our schools? We have a hostile political and judicial climate. We have high poverty in our neighborhoods, and we have hopelessness in our neighborhoods, and we wonder why parents believe somehow that choice is going to make a difference when nobody is investing in the schools in the neighborhood. And yet, if we look at the documentation for choice, what we find is that it's about even and then sometimes flat for our marginalized populations, the Hispanics and the black and brown children. I see counter stories every day. I see stories of grandparents who are in libraries with children. I see the counter stories every day. I see the stories, I see grandparents who are in libraries struggling to do homework with children. I see fathers who are dropping off their children at school every day. I see parents who are coming into parent conferences and asking, what can I do? Do I need to get a tutorial? And yet those are counter stories to what we hear and what we see going on every day. And I'd like to suggest to you that there is a different belief system. There is a belief system that believes in what children can do, that believes in the potential of children. And if you look at the slide, what you can see is that the belief is based on instructional leadership. Now you hear that all day long, instructional leadership, data-based leadership. But though in and of itself, those are vacuums. Because ultimately what the belief is based on today is raising test scores. And so you have a belief in the success of children. And you know, we give lip service that all children can learn. How many of you have heard that expression, all children can learn? Right, we say that. But how many of us believe it? When we're confronted with the child who doesn't have the 300,000 word vocabulary when he comes to school, what do? Oh, their parents fail. But at what point do we say that parents have done the best they can, and what is my responsibility to that child? How can I help that child move from where he is to where he needs to be? What is your responsibility? And then you have students, are the schools only concerned? Not whether the scores increase or not, but the whole child is the concern. Let me give you a quick example. A principal who had children, girls, who could not go to the prom because they didn't have dresses. What did she do? She took up a collection in her faculty so that they could go out and get prom dresses. She had a set of twins who had to ride the bus every day, and it took them 2 hours to get to the school. They worked at McDonald's until 1 o'clock, got home at 5 o'clock, and then it took them 2 hours. They wanted to come to school. She found a teacher in her school who lived in the same area, got permission, and they brought the children to school. Now that's what you call taking care of the child and making the child your first concern. Because I guarantee you, if a child works at McDonald's until 1 o'clock and has to catch the bus at 5 o'clock, that child is not going to do well on your test. I don't care how much drill and kill you give that child. And then you have a safe environment for learning. They insisted on a safe environment for learning. A different set of beliefs, an additional set of beliefs. Beliefs supported the idea that schools were the agent for success. How many of you have been on field trips when you were in school? See, you have a school that's working with you. When I was in the 3rd grade, from the 3rd grade to the 5th grade, back in ancient history, we went to, for real. Okay, so we went to the symphony 3 times a year. The Atlanta Symphony, a whole 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, the buses went to the symphony. Why did they take time to want us to go to the symphony? Exposure. Because I guarantee you, when you get out in the world and people start, you might not like the symphony, but at least you know about it. You understand what I'm saying? In order to participate in today's society, you're going to have to know more than just the boundaries of Albany, the boundaries of Atlanta, the boundaries of Georgia. You have to have traveled somewhere. So can I be real personal and gritty with you? So instead, y'all gonna be mad, but that's okay. So instead of word, you notice I don't have any fingernails, right? And the reason I don't have any nails is because it's just too much money, too much time. But how about you figure out how to save some money so that you and a group of people can travel. Save some money and travel. Go outside of your comfort zone, because you will be competing with people who have been outside of Georgia. They will be talking about things that you don't even have a clue about, and you'll be sitting up looking, what? That, and look, let me tell you something. And I used to tell my students this, I'm getting so off script. I used to tell my students this when I was in the classroom. You have $1 words, $5 words, and $10 words. When you want to impress somebody, take out your $10 word, and I guarantee you, you and 2 other people in the room will know what you're talking about. And all of a sudden, they sit up and they say, oh my goodness, this is a smart person. You can be smart, but you just know more words than they know. There is a book. Put it in your little phones or wherever you put things today. 30 Days to a More Powerful Vocabulary. You can get it on Amazon. It's cheap. It's about $1.26. 30 Days to a More Powerful Vocabulary. When I tell you my students had to use that book as a workbook, and I have had them come back and say, Miss Croft, you cannot imagine how much that book benefited me. Okay. All right. So extracurricular schools should alleviate the impersonality of modern living. All right, now this is my own bias. We have to have online courses, but what happens with online courses? Let me hear you. What? You don't see. Let me tell you what I did recently. I teach online, right? And so I'm having a class and I have my camera on and they can see me, but I can't see them. I see avatars. And I said, wait a minute, wait. I need to look into your eyes. I need to see who you are. And then they kind of hesitated. I said, okay, let me ask this question. Do any of you expect for me to write you a recommendation? They all said, yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am. I said, I don't write recommendations for people that I don't know. And if I have never seen you, then I don't know you. One story. 2, we were having class, and I told a young man, I said, we need to switch your time a little bit later. He said, I can't do that, Dr. Croft. I said, why can't you do that? He said, because I double booked. I said, you double booked? What? He said, I have a date. I said, you have a date during my class time? He said, yes, ma'am. I said, well, at least you're honest, you know. And so I said, no, you're going to be the timekeeper in my class. And sure enough, when his date arrived, and I could see it on the camera, right? He cut his camera off for about 30 minutes, and then he came back. And I thought, this is not the way it's supposed to be. Something is wrong with this picture. And so what I'm saying to you is that we as educators, you as future educators, are going to have to make an effort to connect with the children who are not used to connecting with anything but the computer. Does that make sense? I compete with my grandson with the computer. Turn it off. But that's something you all are going to have to work with. Okay, look at this. This is a kind of cool representation of research that Dr. Pogue and I have done, and based on the work of Dr. Vanessa Siddlewalker. If you can see that pyramid, look at who's at the top. Students. And look who's working together. Parents supported the school. Parents trusted the school to educate their children. I know that's not necessarily the case today, because they think they can teach better than we can. They Google teaching and then they think they can do it. Okay, so then you have parent support and you have the community support. This is a historical model. This is a historical model on which education was based pre-Brown. Notice I said pre-Brown. What I want to suggest to you is that unless you have a light that you're willing to share with others, no community is going to engage with you. Or if they engage with you, it will be a half-hearted engagement. It won't be authentic. So I'll take a few minutes and talk about Titus, teaching in the urban South, a true community engagement. Titus made educating children their first and foremost purpose. That was their vision. And we worked with schools that had the same vision and educators that had the same vision. We built a culture of trust. And one of the ways that we built a culture of trust is that when we worked together, we recognized that the graduate students, these were PhD students, who were working on their dissertations, had as much to offer as the advisor had to offer. Now, I know that's heresy. But as PhD students, we all came from backgrounds. We all worked. We all had ideas. And they honored these ideas. And then we had relationships. We built relationships with the principals. We had people who were what we call boundary scanners. And these people were people who could go in the schools and they build relationships. Let me ask you a question. Who is the gatekeeper in the school? When you walk into a school, who is the gatekeeper? Thank you. Thank you, the secretary. And let me tell you something. If you want to build a partnership and you go in that school and you act like, well, I'm from Albany State University and I have an appointment with the principal, that secretary is going to say, okay, have a seat. And you might be sitting there for an hour or two, or she might say the principal's busy, come back 2 days later. You have to build relationships with the key people in the schools. They're called boundary scanners. You go out and you meet them not as university people, but as people. We all have things in common. Now, those of you who are teachers in the audience, you can raise your hand if I'm telling the truth or not. Let me see. I'm not telling the truth. Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. We have to relate as people. Okay, another thing that we did, we showed deference and respect when we went into these places. Another part is we eliminated hierarchy. And I mentioned that just because Dr. Siddlewalker founded Titus with her research did not mean that she conducted the meetings. We conducted the meetings. And sometimes her ideas clashed with ours, but guess what? When we all talked it out equally, sometimes our ideas prevailed and sometimes her ideas prevailed. Okay. We honored the parents. 3 conferences, 1 at Emory and 2 in the school with no budget. So don't let people tell you that you have to have money. Money is good, don't get me wrong. Having money is very good. It helps a whole lot. That's why we go out after grants. But don't let money be the reason that you don't form partnerships. Our budget was what? 0 budget. And yet we put on 3 conferences. How many of you have ever heard of Pedro Noguera? Pedro Noguera was our keynote speaker, based on relationships. And then we had conferences in the schools. And guess what? The schools need us. We didn't go to the schools and say, I want to do research on thus and so. We went to the school and said, what do you need? Now, I want you to think for just a minute. If you were to go to a school and ask the principal, what does he or she need? They could give you a list of what they need. And then you could come back and you could talk with the students, you could talk with the university professors to find out how could you address their needs. What did we do? SAT prep. How many of you have taken the SAT? Huh? There you go. How many of you had to write a college essay to get in? Okay. What else did we do, Dr. Burr?
We did college tours.
College tours, that's aspiration. Showing the students what they could do, where they could go.
Black History Month program.
We did Black History Month programs. And there was one principal who was interested in separate gender classes. We did the research for that particular principal. So I'm saying that there are all kinds of community engagement efforts that you can make, but that you have to shift your paradigm. And like I said before, if you don't have a light to shine, who wants you to come in their schools, in their communities? Because they say, what are you doing differently from what we hear in the media? I asked a principal what we needed to do. And she said, this is her advice. And notice the African proverb, until the lion learns how to write, every story will glorify the hunter. Until we begin to write our own stories, we will continue to be depicted, schools will be continue to be depicted as places of failing. But these are the things that the principal said. So you know I just haven't been out at Kennesaw doing nothing, right? I've been talking to some real people. Okay. Know yourself and what you believe. That goes back to the beliefs. If you're not in education because you believe you can make a difference, then I ask, why are you in education? Refuse to accept the status quo. You don't have to accept the status quo. You have to think about how to make things different from for your children. Work and live. I love this. This is my word right here. Work and live in courageous persistence with others. That means it doesn't matter whether what you tried failed. What matters is that you tried. And then you have the courage to do it again. Not the same thing, but something different. Because my mother used to say, nothing beats a failure but a what? Try. You see, y'all had some mothers who said the same thing. Nothing beats a failure but a try. And unless you try, how do you know it will or won't work? That's the important thing, courageous persistence. And then parents, believe it or not, parents, you've heard this. Parents are sending us the best that they have. They really are, or they're sending their best someplace else for somebody else to work with them. If they're sending us their best, why are we not giving them our best? I used to tell my students every day, okay, I'm going to give you 150% every day. That's my good day. And on my bad day, you get 100%. And every day is the beginning of a new day for you. You failed a test today. But guess what? Tomorrow, you can try again. And I've heard Dr. Poe today talking to her students who missed the test or failed the test. She said, that's okay, baby. We'll work this out. We'll work this out. That's somebody who sees the light. That's someone who doesn't see the darkness. That's someone who can ignite a light in a child. If you see a child as a failure, what kind of light can you ignite? That child has already bought into the dominant narrative that I'm a failure. And all you're doing is reiterating it. And so we have to find a way to work with parents. It's hard. Don't get me wrong. It's hard. Because some of them come into your office, they will come into your classroom wanting to cuss you out. First thing, cuss you out. Cuss you out first thing. But guess what? One of my colleagues taught me 3 words. I understand. Yeah, okay, 2 words, sorry. At least I learned the lesson, okay. Understand, okay, all right. I understand, 2 words, taught me 2 words. And every time I had an irate parent, I said, ma'am, I understand. I understand. And they began to calm down. And once they calmed down, I said, look, I'm on your team. I believe in your child. I believe your child can do better. How can we work together? What can I do to be your ally? Look, when you leave here, if you don't remember anything else, remember, I understand. And the parents are sending you the best that they have. And then be prepared to learn as much as you can, as often as you can, whenever you can. You cannot be the best teacher you can be if you don't prepare yourself. This is not, okay, I started saying, you can't do this halfway. You cannot teach halfway. You have to be the best. My niece was teaching in high school English. She hated it. I can't stand these children. These children don't want to learn. Blah, 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 blah. I said, wait a minute. Stop. She went back. She got gifted certification. And guess what? All of a sudden, a light bulb went off in her head. Because she realized that she could challenge these children in a different way from what she was challenging them. She became a better what? Teacher. You have to be the, look, when you walk into a classroom, you have to walk into that classroom and say, good morning. My name is Dr. Croft. I need to let you know that you are in the hands of a master teacher. I need to let you know that you will not leave this classroom the way you came in. I need to let you know that your lives will be changed because of what is going on in this classroom. When you go in a classroom with that kind of confidence, the children stand up and take notice and say, oh, what is this? This is a different thing here. She believes in herself. And when you believe in your ability to make a difference in the lives of children, guess what? You make a difference. Because the worst kid you have, the worst kid that you have wants to succeed. They may have been so downtrodden that the world has told them they can't succeed, so they don't believe that they can succeed. But sometimes all you have to do as an educator is plant the seed and let somebody else toil the soil and let somebody else water it for you, and then you will see success. Let me just give you one quick story, and I know I may be going over time. 2. So I had this student who was a D student in chemistry. His chemistry teacher came to me and said, hey, Ms. Croft, I want him in advanced courses. Nobody will take him. I said, why you want him in advanced courses? He's a D student. She said, because he has potential. So I put him in AP courses. I said, if I put you in this AP course, you better make at least a B. He said, yes, ma'am, I will. Hakeem. I put him in the AP course. He made a B. Guess what Hakeem is doing today? He is a doctor. Because somebody believed in him. I'm standing at the Y, and there's this buff dude, right? And I'm looking, whoa, you know. and you know, I looked like that, and I guess he thought I was looking at him, but he was too young for real, you know, so I'm just. And so he said, isn't your name, it was Wade, and your name is Wade? I said, yeah, Miss Wade. He said, you don't remember me? I said, nope. And then he said, I'm Anthony. I said, Anthony? He said, yeah, I was in your English class. And then I said, Anthony, oh my goodness. He said, you called me on the day exams were due. And you said, get up here now. Let me tell you why I called him. When I went to bed that night, I had given him an F. I could not sleep. Something said, call that young man, call that young man, call that young man. And I did, as soon as I got up. Meet me in my classroom at 8 o'clock. From 8 until 5, I made him redo every assignment that he had failed or not turned in. He eked by. Now, I didn't give him any grace. He had to do the work. He eked by with a 70. But that 70 was enough that he passed and graduated. Now, this is before all these tests they had to take, right? He told me that day, he said, Dr. Croft, you don't know what you did for me. I said, no, what did I do? You know, I called you up there. He said, I was the first young man in my family to graduate from high school. First one. He said, and now I'm working in law enforcement and I'm trying to be a mentor for other people. That's what it means when you have a light and when you see the light in other people. Okay, how do we bridge? How do we bridge? Well, look, the first thing is that we have to make children our priority. If we don't make children our priority, then we will never have any authentic community engagements. Somebody read the next one. What does that say? Become what? Stop letting other people write your stories. Stop letting other people say what you can and cannot do with these children. Find a way to do something differently. Somebody else read the next one. If the children can't read and you have the wherewithal, go out to the school. Talk to the principal about setting up a reading tutorial or reading to the children. If they can't do math, because nowadays even I can't do the math. I can't do the math. I have to Google to figure out how to do the math for these children. But somebody has to work with them. What's the next one? You are the primary resource. Use every available resource. Okay, and then next. All right. That's your job. That's what I expect for you to do. Two minutes. Okay, great. I can do this. I can do this. I can sprint. Okay. Oh. Uh-oh. It's gone. Oh, I mean. The battery done it. Okay, all right. I can go on and finish without. Oh, all right. What did you do? Okay. All right. The power of one can make a difference. If you think that one thing can't make a difference, think about a mosquito in a room at night. You wake up all lumped, right? Okay. All right. You can be the light for a child struggling in darkness. Together we can change the course of history. Alone we continue to work in silos and bemoan the state of education. Ignite your lights, create the bridges, and make a difference for the many children who struggle in the darkness. Why? They deserve it. Okay, let's go back to our experiment. Close your eyes. Now, instead of envisioning one candle, I want you to envision everybody in here with a candle. Everybody in here has a light. Okay, open your eyes. Okay. 40 plus years in education, and I still see the light. I see your light. I see the children's light. And I know that we can make a difference. Thank you.